So the last thing we're going to look at in this unit is on something called percentiles, which you may remember from last year. So far, we've done mean, median, and mode, and we've done a couple of types of mean, trim mean and weighted mean. And all of those take a measure of the center of a list of data. Percentiles are a little different. It's not a measure of the center, it's how the measure of one data value is in relation to the others. So as an example here, let's say you scored 88% on an exam, which you think is quite good, but then you talk to a bunch of other people in the class and everybody's saying that they scored higher, okay? So that suggests that the center might be in the 90s, and how you did in relation to the others might not be as high as you think. And the way we measure that is by something called percentiles. First thing, percentile is very different than percent. Okay? Percent is a number that's out of 100. So if you get 98%, you got 98 out of 100. If you get 40 out of 50, that converts to 80 out of 100, 80%. Okay? A percentile talks about the number of data values that are the same as the one we're looking at or lower. So you could score 88% on exam, but your mark could be in the 70th percentile, which means your mark was the same as or higher than 70% of the people that wrote. Okay? So a data value is not the same as a percentile. So let's look at a couple of examples to sort of emphasize the point. So again, you got a mark of 88% on an exam. 100 students have written the same exam as you. Only 10 students scored less than 88%. No other students scored 88% besides you. How does your mark compare with the marks of the other students who have written the same exam? Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to find the percentile. So out of the 100, okay, how many students scored 88% or less? How many scored less? How many scored exactly 88? 1. So 11 out of 100. Okay? So 11 out of 100 scored 88% or less, because you have to count you. So therefore, it equals, we just divide it, 0.11, which equals the 11, sorry, we don't write percent, we write 11 percentile. So even though your mark was 88%, you were at the 11th percentile, which means you scored the same as or higher than 11% of the people that wrote the exam. Okay. Did you guys write the PSAT? It's a practice SAT. I think they used to, okay, but I don't think they do anymore. One of the things they tell you in addition to your mark, I don't think they even mention the average or the mean, but they always tell you your percentile. So how you did to everybody else in the world that wrote that. Okay, this next example, let's say of the 100 students who wrote the same exam as you, 88 of them scored lower than 88%. How does your mark now compare with the marks of other students? Well, how many students now scored 88% or lower? 89, because 88 of them were lower, you were at it, so 89. which converts to the 89th percentile. So you can see that in the first example, you didn't do that great in relation to the others. But in the second example, you did very well in relation to the others. Just like I said here, the higher the percentile rank, the better the data value or the better the score when it's compared with others. The lower, the poorer the score or data value when compared with the others. How do we do it? How do we calculate it? And this is a formula you would get. We would do capital B over N times 100, where B represents the number of scores at or below a given score. And N represents the total number of scores. So in our next example, we've got 32 marks achieved by students on an exam, so 100. Notice they're arranged in order as you go down each column. So it starts with the smallest and then it goes up, all the way up to the highest one. We want to find the percentile rank for each of the following marks. So for 40, we want to count how many marks were 40 or lower. 4. Out of how many total? 32. And then we would convert that to a percent, and that would be our percentile. Oh, sorry, I'll do times 100 equals, and that will give you 12.5. And with percentiles, we never use decimals. We always round up, no matter what the decimal number is. Okay? So it's going to be the 13th percentile. What about a mark of 83? Remember, all the ones that are the same as or lower. How many? Looks like we've got all of those. So it would be how many? 26. So a mark of 83, 26 of those were at a mark of 83 or better out of 32 total marks that were recorded, times 100. Equals 81.25. But remember, always round up. So it's the 82nd percentile. Okay. Of other things about percentiles. Okay. Always between 0 and 100. Okay. Actually, it's between 0 and up to including 100. Because it is possible, or sorry, no, I think 100th percentile would be possible. If it's all the same, if it's the, I think this is wrong, this second, the third bullet. Get confused because in the AP Stats course, percentile is defined a little bit differently.
Your notes are different.
My notes different?
Yeah.
Oh, I must have changed it.
Says there is 100.
Yes, okay, thank you. Yeah, I must have changed it when I did it last year. Yeah, because on that previous example with those 32 marks, if you scored 97, you scored the same as or higher than 32. So 32 out of 32 is 100 percentile. These two bullets we already talked about, the higher the percentile rank, the better, the lower, the poorer. Okay. Talked about this, always round up because we write percentiles as whole numbers. And we can't calculate measures of central tendency based on percentiles, as the results may be misleading. So measures of central tendency like mean, median, and mode are separate. Okay. Just going back to this one, there cannot be a 0. Okay. Because if you got the lowest mark, it's still 1 out of how many wrote it. There is a relationship between percentiles and the median. Okay. If you look at this diagram here, if we look at the 50th percentile, that's the same as the median. Because remember, the median is about half the scores are below, half the scores are above. Well, that's the same as the 50th percentile, which half the scores are the same as or above, or below, and then the other 50 would be above if it was 100. We have a 25th percentile. That means that 25% are here. Here, I'll do some colors. Like so. So if you're at the 25th percentile, about 25%, same or lower than you. If you're at the 50th percentile or median, 50% the same or lower than you. If you're at the 75th percentile, or what we call the Q3 upper quartile, 25 is Q1. That means 75% are the same or lower. And then this would be the maximum. And then this would be the minimum. So you can solve problems from here. So like if you were given like the 75th percentile is such and such, you could find how many data values are in the top 25% if you know what this is. Because it's just 100 minus those, and we'll see that in a few examples. And you can use notation for percentiles. So capital P and then a subscript with the number of the percentile. That means percentile. So we, in those previous ones, you know, when we found the 11th percentile, that would be P11. Okay. A survey is conducted in a community of 2,000 families. Survey yields the following percentiles on family income. So think about what these mean. In this group of 2,000 families, 25% had an income of this or lower. 50% had an income of this, 32,000, or lower. 75% had an income of this or lower. 90% have an income of this or lower. So therefore, what percent earn more than this? Think about it. 90% earn the same or less. What percent would earn more? 10%. You just do 100 minus 10 equals 10%. Approximately what percentage have an income less than 48,000? 100 minus 10. What percent about? Less than 48,000? 75. No, not above. Below. That would be the answer to above. Now, this is a slightly different question. It doesn't ask the percent of families. It asks how many families. Well, what's the percent of families that are less than this? 25 of the 2,000, right? So we would go 25% of the 2,000 families. Therefore, it would be 0.25 times 2,000, which would give me how many families? 500 families. Okay. Okay. So we use percentiles to make certain decisions. And one such area where it's used is college entrance exams, where you have to score a certain level or a certain percentile in order to be considered for admission to some institution. So in this example, Justin writes a college entrance exam, scores 1440 out of a possible 1800. Of the 875 students writing the college entrance exam, 25 have the same score as him, 680 have a score lower than his. What's his percentile rank? Assume, yeah, this is, should probably clarify this. No, that's okay. So if we think about, first of all, the total number of people that vote is 875, right? How many scored lower? 680. How many scored the same? And we also have to include Justin. So it's 680 plus 25 plus 1. Which gives us 706 out of 875, and then we would times that by 100 to convert it to a percentile, and we get 0.807. What would that be in terms of percentile? 81st. And part B, if you want to be considered for this particular program, you need a percentile rank of 75 or better. Is this high enough? Yes. The last example. So some of the more higher level or what are considered the prestigious universities and colleges only accept students with a percentile ranking of 80 or higher. Therefore, these students have marks that are the same or better than 80% of the students in their classes. Why do you think they choose that? What would be a sort of a common sense answer? Why would they want the percentile ranking high like that? Because they want most kids? Or?
So 80 is their like minimum for getting to it.
Yes,
So they want students that are higher.
exactly. They want to attract academically strong students. Because remember, the lower ones won't make it. It's the ones that are at the 80th percentile or higher. Can you think of where they might use these? Where can you think of any programs where you have to write an entrance exam as part of admission to that program? There is one, medicine. You have to write the MCAT, right? So they would sort of consider the percentile rank from there. So medicine would definitely be one. Another one where you have to write an entrance exam, law. You have to write the LSAT. And there's other fields that would probably be used too, even though they may not use an entrance exam. Like you would think engineering might be one, because it's such a challenging program. You want very strong students. Another one could be actuarial, which is a type of finance, but it's very, very high level math and a lot of math. Yeah, it's a tough program to get into. Okay. Anyway.